Rain lashed against the cracked asphalt as heavy footsteps echoed relentlessly behind her. Desperate, she threw herself into the back seat of an idling luxury sedan and squeezed her eyes shut. Suddenly, the deadbolts lammed into place. A voice, smooth as velvet and cold as ice, whispered, "You're safe now." The storm over Seattle on October 14th was merciless, but not nearly as merciless as the man hunting Harper through the labyrinth of downtown alleys. Harper's lungs burned with every jagged breath. Her boots slipped on the wet cobblestones of Occidental Avenue, sending a jolt of pain up her already bruised ribs. Behind her, over the deafening roar of the downpour, she could hear him. "Bradley, you can't run forever, Harper." His voice sliced through the wind, thick with the unhinged rage that had driven him to shatter their apartment window only 20 minutes earlier. "I have Higgins on patrol tonight. The police won't help you. They work for me." It was a terrifying, real-life nightmare. Bradley wasn't just a violent, possessive ex-boyfriend. He had connections. He played poker with local magistrates, drank with corrupt officers like Officer Higgins, and operated untouchable businesses disguised as legitimate real estate firms. To the world, Bradley was a charming entrepreneur. Behind closed doors, he was a monster. Blood trickled down Harper's temple from where his heavy ring had struck her during his initial outburst. The metallic scent of it mixed with the ozone of the rain. She ducked down a narrow service alley near Yesler Way, her vision blurring from adrenaline and terror. She yanked on the handle of a rusted delivery van. Locked. She scrambled toward a chained chain-link fence, but it was too high to climb in her weakened state. Then she saw it. Idling silently in the deepest shadow of the alley was a car that didn't belong in this gritty part of town. It was a sleek, midnight black Maybach, its tinted windows completely impenetrable. The engine purred so quietly, it was more a vibration than a sound. Panic overriding logic, Harper lunged for the rear door handle. To her absolute shock, it yielded with a heavy, expensive click. She didn't hesitate. She threw herself onto the plush floorboards of the back seat, dragging the door shut behind her, just as a flash of lightning illuminated the mouth of the alley. She pressed her hand over her mouth, muffling her own ragged breathing. Outside, Bradley's heavy steel-toed boots splashed into the puddles. He was walking slowly now, pacing like a predator savoring the hunt. "I know you're down here," Bradley crooned, his shadow falling across the rain-streaked window of the Maybach. He stopped right beside the car. Harper's heart hammered so violently against her rib cage, she was certain it would give her away. The scent of rain, cheap whiskey, and Bradley's cloying cologne seeped through the vehicle's exterior vents. He tapped his knuckles against the reinforced glass. Suddenly, a heavy electronic thunk echoed through the cabin. The deadbolts had engaged. Bradley cursed, startled by the sudden noise, and took a step back, kicking a nearby trash can, before turning on his heel and storming back toward the main street. Harper let out a trembling exhale, her entire body shaking. It was only then that she realized the front seat wasn't empty. "He is gone," a voice resonated through the dim cabin. Harper flinched, scrambling back against the leather seats. The voice was unlike anything she had ever heard. It lacked the frantic cadence of human anxiety. It was impossibly calm, rich and dark, vibrating with an unnatural authority. Slowly, the driver turned his head. The faint amber glow from the dashboard illuminated his features, and for a second, Harper forgot to breathe. He was devastatingly handsome, with aristocratic cheekbones and skin as pale as carved alabaster. His hair was pitch black, swept back impeccably, but it was his eyes that pinned her in place. They were a striking, piercing silver. catching the low light like mirrors in the dark. Who are you?" Harper stammered, pulling her knees to her chest. "Please just let me out when it's clear. I don't want any trouble." "You are bleeding," the man noted, ignoring her question. His gaze dropped to the cut on her hairline. For a microsecond, a flash of something dark and primal flared in his silver eyes, and the temperature inside the luxurious cabin seemed to plummet to freezing. Harper shivered, her breath pluming in the air. He reached into the breast pocket of his bespoke charcoal suit and extended a dark silk handkerchief over the center console. The initials DC were embroidered in silver thread in the corner. "Press this to your temple," he commanded gently. "And do not ask me to unlock these doors. If you step back into that rain, the man hunting you will finish what he started. In here you are safe now." "Why are you helping me?" Harper asked, her voice cracking as she took the silk cloth. His fingers brushed hers. They were freezing, like solid ice. "Because," the man said, turning back to the steering wheel as the Maybach glided smoothly forward, seamlessly entering the rain-slicked streets. "Bradley has taken enough from this city. I will not allow him to take you." Harper's eyes widened. He knows Bradley? Before she could demand an explanation, the crushing weight of the night's trauma, the blood loss, and the sudden, overwhelming aura of safety. The stranger projected crashed down on her. The rhythmic purr of the engine and the scent of cedar and winter frost radiating from the driver pulled her into a deep, inescapable darkness. She slumped against the leather, unconscious. Harper awoke to the crackle of a massive hearth fire. She gasped, sitting bolt upright. This wasn't the damp, mildew-scented apartment she shared with Bradley. She was in a cavernous bedroom that looked like it had been transported from a European castle. Heavy velvet drapes framed floor-to-ceiling windows, and the bed she lay on was easily a king-size, draped in charcoal silk sheets. "Easy, Miss Harper. Try not to elevate your heart rate." Harper spun her head. A man in a pristine white coat stood near a mahogany side table, packing medical supplies into a leather bag. He had kind, crinkling eyes and graying hair. "Where am I?" she demanded, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. She realized she had been changed out of her wet, torn clothes, and was now wearing a thick, oversized cashmere sweater. The cut on her head had been expertly stitched and bandaged. "You are at the Vanguard estate," the doctor replied softly. "I am Dr. Kensington. Mr. Castile brought you in late last night. You suffered minor head trauma, cracked ribs, and severe exhaustion." "Mr. Castile," Harper repeated, the memory of the silver-eyed man in the Maybach rushing back. Dominic Castile. The name sounded vaguely familiar, whispered in hushed, fearful tones by the city's elite, though she couldn't place exactly why. "I need to leave. Bradley will use the police to track my phone. He knows people like Judge Matheson. He'll find me." Dr. Kensington offered a dry, almost pitying smile. "Your phone was destroyed by Mr. Castile. And trust me, child, no police officer, judge, or mortal man can cross the perimeter of this estate. You are entirely beyond Bradley's reach." Before Harper could pass the word mortal, the heavy oak door swung open. Dominic Castile stepped into the room. If he had looked imposing in the dim light of the car, he was utterly terrifying in the warm firelight. He moved with a liquid, predatory grace that lacked any human clumsiness. He wore a tailored black shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, and his silver eyes immediately locked onto her. "Doctor," Dominic said softly, not looking away from Harper. "Leave us." Dr. Kensington bowed his head, a literal bow of subservience, and hurried out, clicking the door shut. Dominic approached the foot of the bed. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with an invisible electricity. Harper instinctively pulled the blankets up to her chin. "How do you know Bradley?" Harper asked, opting for bravery over the primal urge to cower. Dominic's lips twitched in a shadow of a smile. "Bradley is a very foolish man who operates in the dark, mistakenly believing he is the monster in the shadows. He is not. He is merely a pest." "He's dangerous," Harper insisted, her voice shaking. "He runs illegal gambling rings. He hurts people. He is a human trafficker," Dominic interrupted, his voice dropping an octave, ringing with a dangerous resonance. "But he does not traffic women to other men, Harper. He traffics them to my kind." Harper froze. "Your kind?" Dominic stepped closer into the direct light of the fire. As he did, the flames seemed to dim, intimidated by his presence. "Let me ask you something, Harper. Have you never wondered why your bruises heal remarkably fast? Why you have a rare blood type that no hospital can easily match? Or why Bradley kept you isolated, feeding you iron supplements, preventing you from drinking alcohol or caffeine, treating you less like a partner and more like a prized calf?" Bile rose in Harper's throat. The iron pills, the forced diets, the way Bradley would sometimes bring strange, pale men to their apartment, men who stared at her neck and wrist with starved, hollow eyes, while Bradley counted thick stacks of cash in the kitchen. "Who are you?" she whispered, shrinking back. Dominic leaned over the bed. As he opened his mouth to speak, the firelight caught the unmistakable, terrifying gleam of elongated canines resting against his lower lip. "I am the Vampire King of the Pacific Northwest," Dominic stated, his voice a mesmerizing, hypnotic rumble that made Harper's pulse hammer in her throat. "For centuries, my syndicate has maintained order, ensuring our survival by living quietly among humanity. But recently, a rogue faction has fractured our peace. They purchase rare, potent vessels to gorge upon, breaking our sacred laws. Bradley is their chief supplier." Harper felt the room spin. Vampires, kings, blood vessels. It sounded insane, yet looking at the immortal, terrifying beauty of the man before her, her instinct screamed that every word was true. "And me?" she choked out. "Why me?" "Because, Harper." Dominic reached out, his freezing fingertips gently brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The touch sent a violent shiver down her spine, a terrifying mix of fear and an electric, unexplainable draw. "Your bloodline carries a dormant, ancient antibody. To regular humans, it means nothing. To a vampire, a single drop of your blood is like drinking pure, unfiltered power. Bradley didn't want to marry you. He was auctioning you off to the highest bidder in the rogue faction. The transaction was meant to happen tonight." Tears welled in Harper's eyes as the horrifying truth shattered her reality. The man she had tried to love, the man she had feared, was merely a broker, preparing her for the slaughter. "Then why didn't you let them have me?" she asked, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Why put yourself in the middle of this?" Dominic's eyes darkened, the silver shifting to a deep, dangerous tempest. His thumb caught her tear, wiping it away with startling gentleness. "Because to defeat the rogue faction, I need the ultimate bait," he confessed, his honesty brutal and chilling. "And because, since the moment you bled in my car, my instincts have been screaming at me to keep you for myself." He stepped back, restoring the physical distance, though the psychological tension remained suffocating. "You are confined to this estate, Harper," Dominic declared, turning toward the door. "You will have every luxury. You will not be harmed by me or my court. But make no mistake, you are not a guest. You are my most valuable asset in a war you are only just beginning to understand." The heavy oak door clicked shut behind him, the deadbolts sliding into place with a sickeningly familiar sound. Harper was safe from Bradley, but as she stared out the window into the misty, impenetrable forests of the Cascade Mountains, she realized she had merely traded one monster for a much, much older one. For 3 weeks, the Vanguard estate became Harper's gilded cage. Nestled deep within the impenetrable fog-drenched forests of the Cascade Mountains, the sprawling Gothic mansion was a fortress of isolation and terrifying luxury. Outside, the endless Pacific Northwest rain battered the heavy leaded glass windows, but inside the air was perpetually warm, smelling of cedarwood, old paper, and a faint electric tang she now recognized as vampire magic. Harper was allowed to roam the vast, echoing corridors, though she was never truly alone. A hulking, silent guard named Sullivan followed her like a shadow, his eyes an unnatural, pale gold. Penelope, a maid who moved with the same fluid grace as Dominic, brought her meals of rich, iron-heavy meats and dark, leafy greens. Harper ate them without complaint, acutely aware that she was being fortified, prepared, and guarded. She saw Dominic Castile only in passing. He was a phantom in his own home, often sequestered in his sprawling library or leaving the estate in the dead of night. When they did cross paths, his silver eyes would track her with a smoldering, predatory intensity that made her breath hitch, but he kept his distance. It was as if he was fighting an invisible battle every time she entered the room. That distance shattered on a stormy Tuesday evening. Harper, restless and unable to sleep, had slipped out of her chambers and wandered down to the east wing. As she passed the heavy oak doors of the grand study, she heard voices, not the hushed, polite tones of the estate staff, but sharp, aggressive arguments. "You cannot seriously expect the local government to turn a blind eye, Dominic," a booming voice argued. Harper recognized it instantly from local news broadcasts. It was Mayor Harrison. The realization sent a chill down her spine. The mayor of Seattle was here, negotiating with a vampire. "I expect you to maintain the perimeter, Mayor," Dominic's voice replied, chillingly calm and cutting through the tension like a blade. "Your police force, specifically corrupt anomalies like Officer Higgins, have compromised the treaty. The rogue faction, led by Nathaniel, is mobilizing in the industrial district. They are using human trafficking as a front to farm rare bloodlines." "And Bradley?" another voice asked, trembling slightly. "Senator Caldwell. He was supposed to be a low-level broker. He was our informant." "Bradley is no longer your concern," Dominic stated coldly. "He overstepped. He brought a prime vessel into the open market, painting a target on my city. I will handle Nathaniel and his rogues. I only require you to ground all emergency flights out of Boeing Field tomorrow night and clear the police presence around the Overtake Symphony Center. The gala will proceed as planned." "A gala?" Mayor Harrison sputtered. "You are setting a trap in a public venue." "It is the only way to draw Nathaniel into the open," Dominic said. "He is arrogant, and he wants what I possess." Harper gasped softly, stepping back. Her heel caught on the edge of the Persian rug, making a faint scuffing sound. In a fraction of a second, the heavy doors flew open. The political figures inside gasped as Dominic materialized in the doorway, staring down at Harper. His expression was thunderous, his jaw clenched tight enough to snap bone. "Meeting adjourned," Dominic commanded, without looking back at the terrified politicians. He stepped into the hallway, shutting the doors behind him, leaving him and Harper alone in the dimly lit corridor. "Spying is a dangerous habit for a human in a house full of predators," he murmured, stepping toward her. The space between them evaporated. He was so close she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his chest, contrasting sharply with the terrifying heat building in her own veins. "You're using me as bait tomorrow night," Harper said, her voice shaking, though she refused to break eye contact. "At the Overtake Symphony Center, you're parading me in front of this Nathaniel person." "I am," Dominic admitted, his silver eyes flashing with a mix of fury and undeniable hunger. He reached up, his cool fingers wrapping gently around her jaw, tilting her head back. "Nathaniel knows I took you. He knows what runs in your veins. He will not be able to resist crashing the gala to claim you." "And what if he succeeds?" she whispered, a tear escaping her eye. "What if Bradley finds me during the chaos?" Dominic's thumb brushed the tear away, his touch suddenly incredibly tender. "Bradley is a ghost, and Nathaniel is a fool. I will not let them touch you, Harper. You are under my protection. You are—" He stopped, swallowing hard as his gaze dropped to the steady, frantic pulse beating at her throat. His fangs elongated slightly, a physiological reaction he seemed desperate to suppress. "I am what, Dominic?" she challenged, her fear suddenly overwhelmed by an intoxicating, dangerous attraction. "Mine," he growled, the word tearing out of him. He closed the distance, pressing his lips to hers. The kiss was punishing, desperate, and cold, tasting of winter and ancient power. Harper gasped into his mouth, her hands instinctively rising to grip the lapels of his jacket. For a terrifying, beautiful moment, the monster and the man blurred into one, and Harper realized she was no longer a prisoner trying to escape. She was a queen, stepping onto the battlefield beside her king. When he finally pulled away, his chest heaved, his fangs fully retracted. "Tomorrow night, you stay by my side. If anything goes wrong, you run to Sullivan. Do you understand?" Harper nodded breathlessly. The war was here, and she was the prize. The Overtake Symphony Center was a masterpiece of modern glass and historic brick, glittering under the Seattle skyline. That night, it was filled with the city's elite, ignorant of the supernatural war simmering beneath their designer suits and silk gowns. Harper stood at the top of the grand staircase, feeling like a goddess and a sacrifice all at once. Penelope had dressed her in a breathtaking, floor-length crimson gown that clung to her curves and cascaded behind her like a river of blood. At her throat rested a heavy, diamond-encrusted platinum collar, a gift from Dominic, doubling as a protective ward. Dominic stood beside her, a devastating vision in a bespoke black tuxedo. His silver eyes scanned the crowded ballroom below, calculating every movement, every shadow. "Breathe," Dominic murmured, offering his arm. "They will smell your fear before they see you." "I'm not afraid," Harper lied, slipping her gloved hand into the crook of his arm. They descended the stairs, immediately drawing the attention of the room. Whispers followed them like dry leaves on the wind. To the humans, Dominic Castile was a mysterious, untouchable billionaire. To the hidden monsters among the crowd, he was their absolute ruler, and he was parading a weapon of mass destruction on his arm. For 2 hours they mingled. Harper drank champagne that tasted like ash, plastering a fake smile on her face as she shook hands with senators and tech moguls. But as the clock struck midnight, the symphony orchestra abruptly stopped playing. The heavy glass doors of the lobby shattered inward. Screams erupted as the freezing Seattle wind howled into the ballroom, bringing with it a dozen figures dressed in ragged, dark clothing. They moved with terrifying speed, their eyes completely pitch black. The rogues had arrived. At the center of the chaos walked Nathaniel. He was tall, gaunt, and radiated an aura of pure malice. But it wasn't Nathaniel that made Harper's blood turn to ice. It was the man walking beside him. Bradley. He was changed. His skin was deathly pale, his eyes manic and bloodshot, glowing with an unnatural, feral crimson light. His jaw was smeared with fresh blood. Nathaniel hadn't just used Bradley as a broker. He had turned him, transforming the abusive thug into an immortal foot soldier. "Dominic!" Nathaniel's voice echoed through the screaming crowd, carrying effortlessly over the panic. "You have something that belongs to the free market. Hand over the girl, and we will let your pet politicians live." Dominic didn't flinch. He pushed Harper firmly behind him. Suddenly, the elegant partygoers standing closest to them, who Harper had assumed were socialites, dropped their champagne glasses. Their eyes flared silver and gold. Dominic's hidden guard. "You have violated my territory, Nathaniel." Dominic's voice boomed, resonant and filled with ancient authority. "Your existence ends tonight." The ballroom erupted into chaos. Vampires clashed at speeds the human eye could barely track. Tables were pulverized into splinters. The terrified human guests scrambled toward the fire exits, escorted by Dominic's loyalists. "Harper!" Bradley's voice sliced through the mayhem. He lunged across the room, clearing a 20-foot gap in a single bound. He crashed into Sullivan, who had stepped in to intercept him, throwing the massive guard through a grand piano with a deafening crash. Bradley turned to Harper, a monstrous grin stretching across his face, revealing viciously long fangs. "You thought you could hide from me in that car. Look at me now, Harper. I'm a god." He lunged for her. Harper screamed, throwing her arms up. But before Bradley could make contact, a blur of black tuxedo intercepted him. Dominic slammed into Bradley with the force of a freight train. The two men crashed through a structural pillar, bringing down a shower of plaster and dust. Bradley fought with the feral, unpredictable rage of a newborn vampire, clawing and snapping. But Dominic was a centuries-old king. With a brutal, fluid motion, Dominic twisted Bradley's arm behind his back, snapping the bone with a sickening crack. Bradley howled, thrashing wildly. His flailing hand caught a jagged piece of the shattered pillar, and in a desperate sweep, he hurled it backward. The sharp debris sliced through the air, grazing Harper's bare shoulder. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as a thin, bright red line appeared on her skin. A single drop of blood welled up and slid down her collarbone. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The entire ballroom froze. Every vampire, rogue and loyalist alike, whipped their heads toward Harper. The scent of her blood was unlike anything they had ever experienced. It was intoxicating, overpowering, singing of ancient power and unimaginable ecstasy. Even the wounded groaned in sudden, desperate hunger. Nathaniel let out a guttural roar, abandoning his fight with two guards, and sprinted directly toward her, his eyes locked on her bleeding shoulder. Dominic's reaction was terrifying. A primal, earth-shattering snarl ripped from his chest. He didn't just execute Bradley. He annihilated him. With one brutal twist, he tore Bradley's head from his shoulders, ending her abuser's unnatural life in an instant. Dropping the remains, Dominic vanished from the spot, reappearing directly in front of Harper just as Nathaniel leaped. Dominic caught Nathaniel mid-air by the throat. The momentum carried them backward, but Dominic planted his feet, driving Nathaniel mercilessly into the marble floor. Without a word of negotiation, without a second of hesitation, Dominic plunged his fist directly into Nathaniel's chest, ripping out the rogue leader's heart. The remaining rogues, seeing their leader decimated and the king's wrath unleashed, broke and fled into the night. Silence descended on the ruined ballroom, save for the crackling of severed electrical wires. Dominic stood over Nathaniel's dust, his chest heaving, his hands coated in ash. He slowly turned toward Harper. His silver eyes were completely black now, overwhelmed by the maddening scent of her blood. He stalked toward her, every instinct of his predatory nature screaming at him to take what was his, to drink the power she offered. Harper didn't run. She stood tall amidst the wreckage, trembling, watching the monster approach. Dominic stopped inches from her. He reached out, his bloody hands hovering over her shoulders. He leaned in, his face buried in the crook of her neck, his nose hovering exactly over the bleeding cut. Harper felt the brush of his fangs against her skin. She closed her eyes, ready to accept whatever came next. But instead of a bite, she felt the impossibly soft, freezing touch of his lips. He kissed the wound, his saliva instantly sealing the cut, neutralizing the intoxicating scent. He pulled back, his eyes slowly returning to their brilliant, clear silver. The monster had receded. The man remained. "I told you," Dominic whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he pulled her into a crushing, protective embrace. "You are safe now, and you will be safe forever. Not as my asset, Harper, but as my queen." Harper buried her face in his chest, the final remnants of her old, terrified life burning away in the ashes of the ruined symphony hall. The hunt was over. She was exactly where she belonged. What a breathtaking finale. From surviving an abusive nightmare to ruling beside the vampire king of Seattle, Harper's journey is the ultimate dark romance redemption. Dominic proved his love was stronger than his hunger, but in the supernatural underworld, peace never lasts long. Did you love this intense, action-packed conclusion? Smash that like button, drop a comment below on what you thought of Bradley's shocking fate, share with your friends, and hit subscribe so you never miss our next thrilling audio drama.